One of the things that we find is that way too many people, especially in the MSP space, spend way too much money to try and get way too few sales, right?
Yes.
It just turns out that it's really not that necessary.
This is Start, Grow, Manage, where we help managed service providers achieve the impact, freedom, and wealth you imagined back when you started your company. At Start, Grow, Manage, our tools, practices, and processes help you engage, energize, and execute on building a business that empowers an extraordinary life. Learn more about our programs and how they can fuel your fire at startgrowmanage.com/learn more. Let's go.
So we tend to think that we have to talk to 1,000,000 people so that we get 2 sales. And no, actually, you only have to talk to like 10 people to get to 2 sales. And trying to talk to everybody in the world just turns out to be really expensive and pretty gosh darn ineffective. Don't you think, Joe?
It's funny because I was talking to this guy this week and we're talking about, he's like, well, I want to get to $1 million. And I'm like, how many clients that you think you need for that? He's, I don't know, about 500. And I was like, yeah, you need about 20, dude. Slow your roll. If you're like super cheap, you need about 40. But if you're properly priced, you need about 20 clients to get to $1 million in ARR. So it's really about 20 clients. And so when you have this misconstrued view in your mind of how many clients you need to hit a particular amount of MRR, then that misconstrued view that you have informs this set of tactical actions that are the wrong actions, right? You're like spraying and praying, baby. You're like,
Right.
You're out there. And so the question is, how do you pull back? And that's what I love about you, Jeff, is that you very often you grab me by the scruff and go, hey, buddy.
Well, I've decided that I'm just going to embrace the fact that what I basically tell everybody to do is stop doing stuff.
Stop doing stuff.
That's my role in life. But let's talk a little bit about what you do. So if you shouldn't do marketing, if you shouldn't do spray and pray, what that leaves you with is a question around how you get in front of some people so that you can convert them to clients. And the strategy that we love for this is actually the Dream 100 strategy that was popularized by Chet Holmes. And I'm going to get the story a little bit wrong. He was working at a periodical at one point, and they were selling to everybody. They were just spraying and praying the whole time. He said, look, who are the 100 clients that if we signed any one of them up, they would be transformative to our business? And these are clients that they knew or they didn't know and that they wanted to work with, and they made this list. And then they focused all of their sales and marketing efforts on that list of 100. And that was transformative for this business because it allowed them to really focus. And what we often miss is that there are tens of millions of companies out there sending tens of millions of messages every day. Every individual is getting 10,000 messages a day. If we want to stand out, we've got to focus that effort. We can't be competing with all those 10,000.
We can't.
It's too expensive. So the idea is you identify these top 100 clients, and then you start going after the top 100 by focusing on them and their needs. And we have a series of steps to help people go through this. But essentially, it's on the website, so we'll put a link to that. But the first step is to identify your Dream 100 targets. And everybody fights us on this, Joe, right?
They fight us, and the thing that they're fighting, especially in the MSP space, is the narrowing down to who the ideal target is, right? When we tell you to identify the 100, not only do we want you to pick 100 random companies, we want you to pick 100 of a kind of company or a kind of person that has a very particular problem and that it's all the same, right? Because you got to get good at the thing.
And you have to know what problem it is that you're solving for them so that you can be very attractive to them. So you want to be sure that you are talking to 100, or that you have a list of 100 prospects that have the problem that you solve, that can pay the price that you need them to pay, and that would, all else equal, be interested, you think, in what you are selling. So once you identify these, and you can start classifying them, you sort of rank them. And by the way, I do know that sometimes you don't come up with 100, sometimes you have 76, sometimes it takes time to get to 100. You start with the top 10, right? And you move on to step 2, which is to create customized, value-rich outreach, right? Because now that you know exactly whom you're targeting, you can curate personalized, high-quality content that speaks to them specifically. You want to tell the Yeti story, the Yeti mug story, Joe? You know
No, you know the Yeti mug story. You actually told me the Yeti mug story.
But
I will tell you a story right after that. Go ahead.
I mean, this came from one of the people we work with. Charlene Ignacio was talking about how one of her clients sent out 100 Yeti mugs with their own logo to 100 people, and they got 0 response. 0. And these are expensive things, right? When you add it up times 100, you're spending a couple $1,000s to send these things out. And then the next time they realized, the observation was, look, you made it all about you, not about them. So the next time they did it, they just started on the top 10 and they put the prospect's logo on the Yeti mug. And then something like 80% of the people actually came back to them and wanted to have a conversation. Because all of a sudden it was about the prospect and not about the person making the sale. We always want to make it about ourselves. So when we talk about value-rich content, what we mean is value-rich where you're solving problems for them and you get yourself and your ego and everything that you want out of it out of the way. That's going to come, right? But you have to show them the value first. And then you distribute that to them through multiple channels, through email, calls, social media, direct email, personalized gifts, whatever it is. And you do this
mail. Yeah.
Right? So go ahead, Joe.
No, I'm saying regular mail. Like, you just keep going. After if you've reached out every possible way you could imagine, then you show up at their space. You bring them a little something. You bring them a little gift and you have a conversation, and you will be surprised at the results that you get from doing something like that.
Yeah. And that is the huge value around this, because it's about them. That surprise comes from all of a sudden they're really interested in having a conversation with you, because for the last couple of weeks you've been talking about them the whole time.
Very cool. So then what?
So then we move on to, so we want to design the process. Step 2 was designing the process, right? So you create the outreach, you create the process. And then step 3 is really that awareness. You're implementing it, right? So you start with some soft touch stuff like your social media connection, or you send an email, and you're subtly introducing your value proposition. And then you gradually intensify your outreach efforts with follow-up emails and calls and that value-rich content that we talked about. So you might reach out to somebody on LinkedIn and send them an email, and then next week you send them that Yeti mug with their logo on it. Maybe they're producing content, and so you like their content and redistribute it or share it. One thing that somebody did is they just went around and started giving prospects Google reviews, right? So they just give them 5-star Google reviews just randomly. And somebody's going to remember that you did that for them. So the key here is to remember that it's a long-term game. So you have to keep this up over time. You have to be persistent. You can't just do it once and then you get a couple of rejections, you don't continue on, right? You have to continue on and continue to reach out to people.
And the other thing to really get, and this is something that, again, I've learned from you and from my own experience, is this a series of experiments that you're doing. So you try something, it doesn't work, then you try something else. And if that doesn't work, then you try something else. But what you can't do is keep changing your target, because you're never going to get there.
Right.
It's, oh, we need to get to California. Okay, let's head north. That's not working. Yeah. You got to head west, right? If you're heading west and then you hit some kind of roadblock, you can't be like, well, maybe we can get to California if we go south. You got to keep going. We just got to figure out how you're going to go west. And what happens is people hit a roadblock and they're like, okay, we'll go northeast and we'll see what happens. And, we'll go north.
Something else. We'll have another conversation.
We'll change directions again. And you keep changing directions and you keep going around circles. And then every few months you find, oh, this feels familiar. I think I've done this before. Yeah, you started it like 6 months ago and now you've just come back to it again and you move forward an inch. So if you want to keep moving in the direction that you're going, you have to keep going in that direction, right? You have to keep pushing in that direction. And you have to keep figuring out, if that didn't work, what will work? Am I using my language instead of the customer's language, right? Because I want to use the voice of the customer. So am I using my voice or am I using the voice of the customer? What is it that I'm not identifying that all of a sudden doesn't appeal to them? Another way to showcase your expertise, you said about commenting on their posts. If they're commenting and the problem that you solve is consistent with what they're saying, give them advice right on their post. Say, hey, a possible solution for this problem is you could do this, and this. Well, that's a great thing.
Right. That's value-added outreach, right?
Right.
You don't want to do, there's a caveat to that, Joe.
Yes, there is.
All the time. Is you don't want to tell people that they're wrong the whole time.
No.
One of the things that doesn't work at all is to tell people how wrong they are. So you go in there and say, no, that won't work at all. You can't do it that way. No, don't. It's not about making people wrong. It's about giving them solutions that they can implement and do. So pointing out people's flaws is
never works. That never works. Oh, let me tell you how much you suck. And the way you should do it, rather than, hey, look, a possible solution for this issue is this. That's usually the way I come at it. It's like, a possible solution for this is this. Because the thing that they're doing might work, it might have been working for them all along. Yeah. Right? You could say another possible way of doing this is you do it like this, and they never thought of that before. Because
100%.
Your solution may not be the end all be all, but it's a different solution that they haven't looked at before. And so
it's not about the best solution communicator. It's about the best engager. It's most solutions work pretty well, honestly, unless you're talking to somebody who's a charlatan. The question is really, how are you engaging people? On the website, we have like a 10-point engagement process, an example process, and you can make this however you want. But it starts with touch point 1, you have a LinkedIn connection, touch point 2, a welcome email, touch point 3, some sort of social media engagement, touch point 4, some sort of customized content, touch point 5, some direct mail, right? So this is where you can send a handwritten note or a Yeti mug or whatever that's about them. You have a follow-up email, a phone call, and then you could invite them to take a test of your services. And then you might send them some sort of customized email again. But you keep going through this process of showing them what you can do and giving them content. Now, there are a couple of things that are important as you go through this. These are like magnifiers or multipliers. And they are some ideas around influence. And one of them is reciprocity. So if you give something, you create an obligation in your prospect to return the favor. This is just human nature, right? And so the idea is that by giving them a Yeti mug that's about them, and I'm not promoting Yeti, by the way, like whatever you want to give is fine. By giving them the Yeti mug, you are creating an obligation in their mind to somehow reciprocate. So that's one thing. The other thing is this idea of consistency. People like to act in a way that is consistent with what they've done before. So when they start taking action, you can remind them of the action they've taken in the past. And that is going to make them more likely to take the next action. So as you go through this process, you can say, hey, when, like that conversation we had last time, I'd like to do this again, or something along those lines really helps people look at your content. So you can keep those things in mind. And then you want to think about the offer, because you want to have a call to action. Early on, that call to action is really going to be to something value added and something for free. But eventually you want them to take you up on your offer. And that offer should be your entry point offer, that first thing that you are going to do for them. So you don't have to sell them the whole service and everything and get the whole price. You just get that first offer out there. And if you don't know what an entry point offer is, check out our video on offers where we talk about the different types of offers and offer value ladders so that you can work on creating those, and think about how your Dream 100 can lead to an offer that gets them very excited about working with you. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the final product. And this is a very valuable thing because it gets people out of the idea of I can only buy the expensive service and I have to make a lot of change, and gets you into I just have to take that next step, that next little step, and then you build on that over time.
And it's really having those little steps, right? Not making them jump a chasm to get to that offer is really important.
And then you move into your sales conversation from there, where you talk about the problem, you talk about the solution they need for that problem, you talk about transformation, and then you can start making your final offer there. But that's the idea behind the Dream 100 strategy. It's not complicated, right? It's just a process. Why do people resist it, Joe? Why do you think?
There's a few reasons, right? I was I'm talking to one of our clients, and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to narrow down to medical and lawyers.
Yeah.
And I said, that's not narrow. You got to get narrower. And it was like a 3-week fight. And they're like, no, we're not going to have, that's not going to be enough. That's not going to be enough. That's not going to be enough. If we narrow more, it's not going to be enough. So finally, we end up at gastroenterologists.
Yeah.
Like, that's narrow. That's really narrow. Then they look in their zip code. There's 328 gastroenterologists. I remember we said at the beginning, we need 20 clients, right? It's 328. And then yesterday we were having a conversation, and they're looking like, oh, we need to go visit some of these, right? We're going to start the Dream 100 strategy, and we're going to start reaching out to them. Then we're going to visit them. And they do a search local, and they find 16 in a building. In one building. Oh, there's this medical tower that's near us, and on different floors, there's 16 of them. Now, there's 38 in the building, but some of them are shared practices, but there's 16 individual ones in one building. So the resistance is there won't be enough, and I won't be able to get to them.
Yeah.
And it turns out that birds of a feather flock together. There's a reason why there's 16 in a building.
Yeah.
Because that's where people go to deal with their gastroenterology stuff. And if you look at that, if you go to medical buildings, there's like some that are all ophthalmologists, some they're all dermatologists, some they all like congregate in a building. It makes it easy.
The point is you can find a lot of these people. Like, once you narrow down, you can actually find a lot of that target customer.
The fear is that there are not enough. They're not. If I narrow, I'm going to be missing all these other opportunities.
Yeah.
There's another thing, especially for service providers and particularly for MSPs, because when you're under $1 million, you're like, I'll take whatever you give me, man. Come on, just throw me something. Whatever's they got a check, I'll take it. But here's the problem. If you take everybody, you can't create repeatable processes. You can only create repeatable process for what we like to call, or Juan Fernandez calls, the janitorial work, right? The janitorial work. So it's 365, like the email, the cybersecurity. But at the end of the day, real customers don't care about that.
Yeah. And that's low value. That ends up being very low value stuff because
so you can only compete on price. That's it, right? Versus you solve a real business problem, right? So we figure out what these problems for gastroenterologists is. Their EHR is not connecting properly to the machines that they use to look inside you.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you become an expert in fixing that problem. It doesn't matter who comes in as competition. If they don't know how to fix that, nobody cares. And if you charge twice as much as the other guy, they don't care either. Because at the end of the day, they need to do business, and you can fix the problem that keeps them from doing business. And so the thing that scares them the most, and you and I have had this conversation, is having to put your ass on the line for actually delivering what you say that you're going to do. Like actually doing the thing. But to actually do the thing, you have to actually be an expert. So the biggest pushback that I get is, but I'm not an expert in that. So how can I say I'm an expert in that? You're not an expert in any of the other crap either, and you're doing it.
Right. So there's that perception, well, but I'm not an expert in it, so I'm going to go to other places where I'm not an expert, and for some reason it's going to be easier to sell.
Because
to a broader group of people rather than sell expertise to a narrow group of people, right?
So what I say is if you're going to do it anyway, sell to a narrow group of people and start to learn their problems and fix their problems so that you can create repeatable processes for fixing their problems. And then guess what happens after you do that for a while? You become a freaking expert. Expert.
And then get to your price. It goes up. So I think that's the essence of it. If you're looking for your next customer and trying to figure out how to use marketing to get there, the way to use marketing to get there is to be sure that you have a product that somebody wants, that you're solving a problem that's important to them, that you identify 100 of those prospects that meet those criteria and create a focused, structured program to go after them, to get to know them, to build that trust and relevance so that they start buying your products and they start working with you. And recognize that this takes a little bit of time, but in our experience, it's faster than scattershot marketing. It's faster than spray and pray. It's faster than trying to be generic. It delivers better results more quickly, even though it is a longer term strategy. But the key is the focus. The focus and the repetition.
It's focus, it's repetition, and it's being clear that your entry point offer has to solve an acute problem, right? Because for us as technologists, the other thing that we have a tendency to do is to go for the complexity. I'm going to show you how to solve your HIPAA compliance framework, blah, 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 right? So we had a client that worked on dentists only, right? Yeah. And they had all this complex stuff that they did. And then after they asked the dentist some questions, what they found is that there was this one cable that broke all the time. That if you could fix that, holy crap, that became their entry point offer. Hey, we know how to fix that cable.
Yeah.
And we keep it from breaking. We have a process to keep that cable from breaking. And then they got in. And once you land, you expand. See, you can ascend once you're in, but you have to find the acute problem. It's like going to the dentist, right? You might feel around with your tongue and you feel a little hole. Oh, there's a little hole in my tooth. Oh, yeah, that's okay. And then a couple of weeks go by. And it hurts a little bit, but it's fine. And then your face feels like it's going to fall off. And you go to the dentist and now you need a root canal, right? Because you weren't paying attention until it was acute. And for business owners, they're not paying attention to this acute. So you want to solve an acute problem, even if it's a simple one. Yeah. Because that's going to get you in the door. And once you land, then you expand.
All right. Good. All right, Joe. So that's the strategy. You can get more information about it on our website. You can just Google Dream 100 for MSPs and we will pop up and check it out there. If you have any questions about how to implement this, let us know. And thank you for watching and for the amazing work that you do.
All right. And remember that you are loved.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining us, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one right now and tap into our insights and instincts to help drive your business vision and success. Remember, you didn't start your business to feel frustration. You started it for freedom. We can help you discover the impact, freedom, and wealth you always imagined. Learn more at startgrowmanage.com/learn more.